The wreckage drifted through the Kepler Nebula like a metallic corpse, its hull scarred by impacts that would have vaporized any known starship. Captain Vexilla of the hegemony research vessel Luminous Truth stared at the tactical display with 4 of her 6 eyes, while the remaining 2 monitored her crew's horrified expressions. "Impossible," whispered Navigation Officer Quindar, his tentacles trembling as they manipulated the sensor controls. "The radiation signature. It's from Sol 3, the Death World." The twisted mass of metal before them defied every principle of spacefaring engineering the galactic hegemony had established over 3 millennia. No civilization could survive on a Class G Death World, a planet where tectonic plates shifted like restless beasts, where electromagnetic storms could fry electronics from orbit, where the very atmosphere contained enough oxygen to turn metal into rust and flesh into flame. Yet here was proof, a spacecraft bearing the unmistakable isotopic fingerprint of that nightmare world. "Run a deep scan," Vexilla commanded, her voice steady despite the ice forming in her circulatory fluids. "I want to know what we're dealing with." The results made her secondary heart skip beats. The hull wasn't constructed from any known alloy. It was a patchwork of materials that shouldn't exist together. Titanium steel composites welded to crystalline matrices, organic polymers fused with exotic matter that registered as both liquid and solid simultaneously. The ship's design was utterly alien, yet somehow functional in ways that made hegemony engineers weep. "Captain," Chief Science Officer Rallenth's voice cracked across 3 vocal registers. "I'm detecting life signs." The bridge fell silent except for the humming of life support systems. Vexilla felt her scales bristle, a primal response inherited from her predatory ancestors. "How many?" she asked. 12. No, 13 distinct biological signatures. But Captain." Rallenth paused, recalibrating his instruments. "They're moving around inside. They're alive." The implications crashed through the bridge like a quantum cascade failure. If there were survivors aboard a vessel from Sol 3, it meant the impossible had occurred. The Death World had somehow spawned a spacefaring species. "Deploy recovery protocols," Vexilla ordered, her tactical mind overriding her terror. "Full quarantine procedures. Whatever's on that ship has survived conditions that would kill us in nanoseconds." As the Luminous Truth's magnetic grapples locked onto the derelict, Vexilla couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't rescuing survivors. They were bringing something aboard that had evolved to thrive in conditions no sane species would call habitable. The first sign that her fears were justified came when the hull breach sealed itself. Not slowly, not with the hiss of emergency foam, but instantly, as if the ship were healing its own wounds. The second sign was the rhythmic pounding that began echoing through the Luminous Truth's hull. It wasn't SOS. It wasn't any distress pattern in the galactic database. It was a heartbeat, strong, steady, and absolutely terrifying in its implications, as the airlock cycled and the first glimpse of the ship's interior appeared on their screens. Vexilla realized they had made a discovery that would either revolutionize galactic civilization or destroy it entirely. The creatures stirring within that twisted metal coffin had survived the unsurvivable. They were about to meet humanity. The interior of the human vessel resembled the digestive tract of some impossible predator. Cables hung like neural pathways, along corridors that curved in directions that hurt to contemplate, while surfaces that should have been smooth were covered in what appeared to be scar tissue, metallic flesh that had been wounded and had healed stronger. Commander Vexilla led the boarding party herself, her environmental suit's radiation shielding already registering levels that would have been lethal to most known species. Behind her, 3 of her best xenobiologists struggled to process the readings streaming across their instruments. "The atmosphere is..." Dr. Kethavar paused, his vocal sacs quivering with disbelief. "It's 21% oxygen, pure atmospheric fire. How are they not combusting?" The answer came as they rounded a corner and encountered their first human, the Creature was tall, taller than any hegemony species, with pale flesh stretched over a frame that seemed built for violence. Its optical organs were small and predatory, set in a face that belonged on an apex hunter. When it saw them, instead of fleeing or showing submission, it smiled. That expression would haunt Vexilla's dreams for cycles to come. Rows of bone white, teeth designed for tearing flesh, crinkling around those terrible little eyes in an expression her xenopsychology training told her was supposed to indicate pleasure. "Hello," the creature said in perfectly accented galactic standard. "I'm Lieutenant Mavericka Thorne. Welcome aboard the UES Resilience." The casual nature of the greeting, as if entertaining visitors was normal aboard a ship that had clearly survived catastrophic hull breaches, sent shock waves through the boarding party. Dr. Kethvar's instruments were screaming warnings about the creature's internal temperature, blood pressure, and electrical activity. Everything about this human suggested it should be dead. You speak standard?" Vexilla managed. "We've been monitoring hegemony transmissions for about 30 rotations," Lieutenant Thorne replied, her tone conversational despite the fact that she was breathing concentrated poison. "Your people are quite chatty on the hyperwave frequencies. We learned a lot about galactic civilization while we were recovering." Recovering from what? The human's smile became something that would have made a void shark retreat to safer waters. "Our engine rooms suffered a containment breach near Proxima. We've been drifting through hard vacuum for 6 months with a hull breach you could fly a shuttle through. Nothing we couldn't handle." Dr. Kethavar's instruments confirmed the impossible. The ship's engine room was still partially exposed to space. The humans had been living and working in conditions that would have killed any known life form within microseconds. "Would you like a tour?" Lieutenant Thorne asked with that terrifying smile. "Captain Rourke would love to meet you. She's been curious about galactic politics." As they followed the human deeper into the vessel, Vexilla realized they weren't dealing with a spacefaring species. They were dealing with something that had weaponized survival itself. Every system on the ship was a study in controlled catastrophe. Backup systems that activated only when primary systems failed catastrophically, hull plating that grew stronger under stress, life support that seemed designed around the assumption that everything would go wrong simultaneously. The humans weren't just surviving their journey through space. They were thriving in conditions that would constitute active torture for any other species, and they were heading for civilized space. "Captain." Nixandra Rourke stood in what had once been the ship's bridge before half of it was torn away by micrometeor impacts. She was reviewing stellar charts on a display jury-rigged from 3 different broken systems, her bare hands working with electronics that were sparking with enough voltage to fry a hegemony navigation computer. "Captain," Lieutenant Thorne announced, "our guests from the hegemony vessel have arrived." Rourke turned, and Vexilla's danger instincts, honed over decades of deep space exploration, screamed warnings that made her scales lock in defensive position. The human captain was smaller than her lieutenant, but something in her bearing suggested she was exponentially more dangerous. Her eyes held the flat, patient expression of something that had killed before and would kill again without hesitation. "Honored to meet you," Rourke said, extending her hand in what Vexilla's cultural database identified as a human greeting gesture. "Though I have to admit we weren't expecting company." "Your vessel appears to have suffered catastrophic damage," Vexilla managed, gesturing toward the gaping hole where the bridge's forward section should have been. "How are you maintaining life support?" Rourke's laugh was like the sound of metal, tearing under stress. "Life support. This is life support." She gestured toward a series of tanks connected by tubing that looked suspiciously organic. "We've been recycling atmospheric gases through algae bioreactors for the past 4 months. The hull breach actually helps, gives us a nice convection current to work with." Dr. Kethvar was frantically taking readings, his instruments painting an increasingly impossible picture. The humans were maintaining a stable ecosystem inside a half-destroyed starship using what appeared to be controlled decomposition and atmospheric recycling that bordered on biological warfare. Your homeworld, Vexilla said carefully, the hegemony, has classified it as uninhabitable. Class G Death World. How did your species achieve spaceflight? Oh, Earth's not that bad once you get used to it, Rourke replied casually. Sure. The weather tries to kill you, the geology is unstable, and the atmosphere is corrosive to most materials. But you adapt. We've been dealing with extinction-level events every few thousand cycles for millions of rotations. Space is actually pretty peaceful compared to home. She gestured toward the star charts. We're heading toward what your people call the inner systems. Our scientists back home are curious about galactic civilization. We thought we'd introduce ourselves. The casual way she said it made Vexilla's secondary heart stop entirely. These creatures, these impossibly resilient predators, weren't refugees or explorers. They were scouts. How many ships? Vexilla asked, though she dreaded the answer. Oh, just us for now, Rourke replied. We wanted to see how friendly you folks were before we sent the colony ships. Colony ships. Plural. Vexilla's mind reeled at the implications. If humans could survive in the void with a breached hull, what could they do to established worlds with their actual technology intact? We should probably warn you, Lieutenant Thorne added helpfully. Our ship's automation systems have been trying to repair the hull breach. They should have it sealed up in the next few rotations. The ride might get a bit bumpy when the atmospheric pressure equalizes. As if summoned by her words, a low groaning sound echoed through the ship's structure. Vexilla watched in horror. As the edges of the hull breach began to move, metal flowing like liquid as the ship literally healed itself around them. These weren't just survivors. They were something evolution had crafted specifically to thrive in conditions that would destroy civilizations. And they were coming to visit. The hull breach sealed with a sound like a massive bone snapping back into place. The atmospheric pressure equalized so rapidly that Vexilla's environmental suit registered emergency-level changes, yet the humans continued their conversation without even pausing. Impressive, isn't it? Captain Rourke said, noticing the hegemony team's instruments going haywire. Our shipbuilding philosophy is pretty different from yours. We assume everything will break, so we design for it. Dr. Kethvar was staring at his readings with the expression of someone whose understanding of physics had just been personally violated. The structural integrity readings. Your ship is stronger now than it was before the breach. Stress-responsive metallurgy, Lieutenant, Thorne explained cheerfully. The hull matrix learns from damage patterns and adapts. Give it a few more breaches and it'll be nearly indestructible. Nearly indestructible. The words echoed in Vexilla's mind as she processed the implications. The hegemony's greatest warships were marvels of engineering designed to avoid damage. Entirely. These humans had built their vessels to become stronger through violence. Captain Rourke, Vexilla said carefully, what exactly are your intentions regarding hegemony space? The human's smile was answer enough, but she provided words. Anyway, trade, mostly. Cultural exchange. We're particularly interested in your medical technology. Our doctors think they can adapt it for more challenging conditions. More challenging than surviving vacuum exposure. You'd be surprised what constitutes a medical emergency on Earth. Our field medics routinely work in conditions your doctors would classify as immediately fatal. Rourke's expression grew thoughtful. Though I suppose that's why we developed regenerative medicine. Hard to maintain a civilization when every other day tries to end it. Regenerative medicine. Vexilla felt her scales begin to molt prematurely. Stress response she hadn't experienced since her first combat deployment. These creatures had not only survived their death world, they had developed medical technology based on the assumption of catastrophic injury. Perhaps, she suggested with forced calm, we could arrange for formal diplomatic contact. Representatives from both our civilizations could meet in neutral space to discuss. Oh, that won't be necessary, Rourke interrupted. "We'll be reaching the outer colonies in about 15 rotations. We can handle introductions ourselves." 15 rotations. Vexilla's tactical computer helpfully calculated that the Resilience, despite its cobbled-together appearance, was moving faster than the hegemony's fastest scout ships. The humans had apparently mastered faster-than-light travel using technology that looked like it was held together with determination and spite. "Captain," came a voice over the ship's communication system, "this is engineering. The quantum drive is showing some resonance fluctuations. Should we shut it down for maintenance?" "Negative," Rourke replied without hesitation. "We'll run it until it fails, then fix it. Standard protocol. Run it until it fails. Standard protocol." Vexilla realized she was witnessing a completely alien approach to technology. Where hegemony engineers designed systems with multiple redundancies and safety protocols, humans apparently designed them to operate at their breaking point as a matter of course. "How do you prevent catastrophic failures?" Dr. Kethvar asked, his scientific curiosity overriding his terror. "We don't," Lieutenant Thorne replied. "We plan for them. Every system on this ship is designed to fail safely and be repaired under combat conditions. It's more efficient than trying to prevent problems that will happen anyway." The philosophical implications hit Vexilla like a quantum torpedo. These beings didn't just come from a death world. They had internalized the death world's lessons. They had built their entire civilization around the assumption that everything would try to kill them, and they had decided to kill it back. "One more question," Vexilla said. "What makes you think the hegemony colonies will welcome your arrival?" Captain Rourke's smile returned, and this time it carried the weight of geological ages and extinction events, survived through sheer bloody-minded determination. "Oh, they'll welcome us," she said with quiet confidence. "After all, we're here to help." The way she said help made it sound like a threat wrapped in good intentions. 3 rotations later, the Luminous Truth received a priority transmission from Hegemony Central Command. Admiral Zephyros himself appeared on the quantum communicator, his usually composed features tight with concern. "Captain Vexilla, report immediately to Kepler Station. The Security Council needs to be briefed on these humans." But when they arrived at the station, they found the docking bay in chaos. Emergency crews were rushing between ships while station security maintained a perimeter around something that made Vexilla's blood turn to ice water. The Resilience was docked at Bay 7, looking completely unharmed despite the fact that the station's automated defense grid showed evidence of recent weapons fire. "What happened here?" Vexilla demanded of Station Commander Yilthak. "The humans happened," Yilthak replied, his usual arrogance replaced by something approaching shell shock. "They requested permission to dock for minor repairs. When our automated systems detected their ship's radiation levels, the defense grid activated standard quarantine protocols." Vexilla felt her scales begin to molt again. "The grid fired. On them? 37 plasma torpedoes, point-blank range, direct hits." Yilthak's voice was hollow. "Their ship absorbed the impacts like they were gentle breezes. Then they politely requested docking clearance again." Through the viewport, Vexilla could see human crew members working on their vessel's exterior hull. They were working in hard vacuum, wearing what appeared to be nothing more than lightweight environmental suits that looked like they'd been patched together from spare parts. They moved with casual efficiency that suggested this was routine maintenance rather than emergency. "Repair, how are they working in vacuum?" Dr. Kethvar whispered. The answer came from Captain Rourke herself, who had apparently been monitoring their communications. Her voice came through the station's comm system with casual friendliness. "Our suits are designed for extended deep space operations. We routinely work outside the ship for rotation cycles at a time. It's actually more comfortable than being inside during atmospheric processing. More comfortable in hard vacuum than inside their ship." "Captain Rourke," Admiral Zephyros's voice cut through the comm channel, heavy with the authority of 3 centuries of military command. "You will report to the station's diplomatic suite immediately for debriefing. Of course, Admiral. Though, I should mention, my crew needs to finish recalibrating our reactor first. The torpedo impacts knocked our containment field slightly out of alignment. Torpedo impacts. Vexilla watched through the viewport as human engineers worked around what appeared to be a miniature star contained in a field generator that looked like it had been assembled from crystallized lightning and good intentions. 2 hours later, in the diplomatic suite, Admiral Zephyros faced Captain Rourke across a table designed for formal negotiations between civilized species. The human captain had arrived wearing what appeared to be a dress uniform that had been through several small wars and somehow looked better for it. "Captain Rourke," the Admiral began, "your vessel's capabilities present certain security concerns." "I understand," Rourke replied. "Our technology probably seems pretty aggressive compared to yours. But you have to understand, we come from a world where everything is trying to kill you all the time. Our engineering philosophy reflects that reality. Your ship withstood a direct assault from military-grade plasma weapons. Well, yes. Our hull plating is designed to survive solar flares, magnetic storms, and relativistic particle bombardment. Plasma weapons are actually pretty mild compared to what we deal with during routine spaceflight." Admiral Zephyros leaned forward. "What exactly do you want from the hegemony?" Captain Rourke's smile was bright and terrifying. "Partnership. Your civilization has achieved something remarkable. Peaceful coexistence across dozens of species and thousands of worlds. We'd like to learn from that. And in return, we offer our expertise in survival technology, medical advances, engineering, solutions for hostile environments." Her expression grew thoughtful. "We understand the galaxy can be a dangerous place. We'd like to help make it safer." The way she said safer suggested that her definition of the word might differ significantly from the hegemony's. One standard year later, Vexilla stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station and watched the impossible become routine. The docking bay below hosted 3 human vessels, their crews working alongside hegemony engineers on what the humans called collaborative projects. The projects were revolutionary and terrifying in equal measure. The medical bay now housed human doctors who performed surgery in conditions that would have killed their patients before they developed techniques for enhanced trauma response. Hegemony patients who would have died from injuries were now walking around with what the humans cheerfully called field modifications, biological adaptations that made them stronger than they had been before their injuries. The engineering sections had been transformed by human efficiency consultants who redesigned critical systems to operate at what they considered acceptable failure rates. Station defense grids that had never been tested in actual combat were now routinely stress-tested to destruction and rebuilt stronger. But it was the diplomatic implications that kept Vexilla awake during her rest cycles. "Status report, Captain," Admiral Zephyros said as he joined her at the viewport. "The outer colonies are reporting unprecedented stability," she replied. "Crime rates have dropped to nearly 0. Territorial disputes have been resolved. Trade routes that were considered too dangerous are now operating at full capacity. And the humans?" Vexilla gestured toward the docking bay, where Captain Rourke was explaining something to a group of hegemony colony administrators. Whatever she was saying was making them nod enthusiastically while simultaneously looking terrified. "They're helping," Vexilla said. "Exactly as they promised." The help took forms that would have been considered impossible before humanity's arrival. Pirates who had plagued shipping lanes for decades were now working as security consultants, having been convinced by human negotiators that cooperation was more profitable than predation. Hostile environmental conditions that had made certain worlds uninhabitable were now being transformed into challenging but manageable living spaces by human terraforming teams. The humans hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more effective. They had made the galaxy realize it wanted to be conquered by them. "The Security Council wants to know about their homeworld," Admiral Zephyros said quietly. Earth. How many more like them are there? Vexilla had been dreading this question. The latest intelligence reports from human space painted a picture that challenged everything the hegemony thought it knew about planetary development. According to Captain Rourke, Earth currently supports approximately 8 billion humans, she said. They have 37 major nation-states, most of which are apparently still in some form of conflict with each other. 8 billion. The Admiral's voice was faint. All of them like Captain Rourke? No, Vexilla replied, and felt a moment's relief cross the Admiral's features. According to the psychological profiles, Captain Rourke and her crew represent what humans consider military specialists. The majority of their population consists of what they call civilians. The Admiral's relief evaporated as the implications sank in. If these humans, these impossibly resilient, casually terrifying predators, were considered military specialists, what did that say about their civilian population? There's more, Vexilla continued. They've offered to host a diplomatic mission to Earth. They want to show us their homeworld. Through the viewport, they watched as a new human ship docked. The UES determination was larger than the Resilience, and its hull bore the scars of what looked like recent combat. Its crew disembarked with the casual efficiency that had become humanity's trademark, immediately beginning what they called routine maintenance that involved rebuilding half the ship while it was still occupied. Captain Rourke's voice came over the station's comm system. Admiral Captain Vexilla, you might want to come down to Bay 12. The colony ship from Earth has arrived, and Captain Velnara has some interesting proposals for expanding our partnership. Colony ship. From Earth, Vexilla and Admiral Zephyros exchanged looks that contained 3 centuries of military experience and the growing realization that they were witnessing the beginning of a new galactic age. The humans hadn't just survived their death world. They had turned survival into an art form, cooperation into a weapon, and helpfulness into a form of gentle conquest that left everyone grateful for the experience. As they made their way to the docking bay, Vexilla reflected on the past year. The galaxy was safer, more prosperous, and more unified than it had been in generations. Trade flourished, conflicts resolved themselves with remarkable efficiency, and technological advancement had accelerated beyond all previous projections. The humans had kept their promise. They had made the galaxy safer. The fact that safer apparently meant under the benevolent protection of apex predators from a death world was something the hegemony was still learning to accept. But as Vexilla watched Captain Rourke greet the new arrivals with that terrifying smile, she realized that acceptance wasn't really optional anymore. Humanity had arrived, and they were here to help. Whether the galaxy wanted their help or not, the age of human expansion had begun, and it would be the most politely unstoppable force the universe had ever seen.